Carrie. Welcome to Project U 2.2, where we explore mindset, growth, and how to step confidently into your next chapter. We're not just here to upgrade from the 1.0 version of ourselves to the 2.0. We're aiming for that next level stretch, the 2.2 version, where the small shifts turn into real, lasting transformation, and every choice feels aligned with your best self. Let's dive into something that reveals the ugly side of all of us. Emotional triggers. Those moments that make us say things we don't mean or react in ways that we regret later and wonder why certain things set us off so fast. Your triggers aren't your enemy. They're your teacher. They reveal the lessons you keep bumping into and the growth that your future self is craving. But first, you have to pay attention. The question is, are you just reacting automatically or are you listening? What are triggers? They're those moments when someone cuts you off in traffic and you might get angry and yell, even though they can't hear you, and you probably wouldn't act like that if they were standing next to you. Or when you're trying to follow directions to assemble something. It's confusing and you lash out, taking your frustration out on the very people standing next to you, helping you, usually your family members. Or when someone says something that you take offensively, and you might react by screaming or saying something rude back to them. Or maybe you've noticed someone in your life who seems to get triggered by almost everything. The door is held open for a minute too long. They get angry about it. Someone hesitates at a stop sign or drives differently than they expect. It triggers anger. Things aren't done exactly the way they think they should be. They try to control the situation and their frustration fills the room. Quite honestly, it is exhausting to be around people like this, and it shows us just how much unchecked emotional reactions can affect everyone around us. Our youngest son loves the word trigger, and he thinks it's hilarious to try to trigger people. But remember, triggers themselves aren't your enemy. They're teachers. They reveal where old patterns, fears, and learned habits live. They show you where growth is possible. In this episode, we'll explore how to recognize your triggers, understand what's happening in your brain and body, and learn how to respond instead of react. We'll even use a simple analogy, thermostats and thermometers, to illustrate emotional regulation in real life. And I'll share actionable steps to help you stay in control the next time your emotions flare. Triggers are emotional reactions, often automatic, sometimes subtle, a flash of irritation, other times full-blown anger, anxiety, or withdrawal. They happen before we even realize it, and they're often shaped by past experiences, by the patterns we've learned over time. Let me give you some examples I think you'll relate to. You're in line for something. Someone cuts in front of you, and you feel that instant surge of anger. At work, a teammate criticizes a project. You immediately go on the defense. A friend forgets to include you in a group text. You spiral into feeling left out or unimportant. Someone teases, "You always have to be right." Suddenly, you're defending yourself before you even know why. Or you go silent, withdrawing and stewing inside instead of expressing yourself. Notice how these reactions are often automatic. They don't feel like a choice. There's good news here. We can choose how to respond. That's where the thermostat versus thermometer analogy will come into play. So let's talk about thermometers and thermostats. Think of a thermometer. A thermometer measures the temperature around it and changes based on the environment. It reacts to everything that's happening outside of it. If the room heats up, the thermometer rises. If it cools down, it drops. It has no control. It just mirrors what's happening around it. A thermometer reacts to every little change in temperature. Hot, cold, hot, cold. It moves up and down constantly. In life, a thermostat person reacts automatically to every stimulus, every small irritation, criticism, or conflict. They feel deeply and they respond immediately. Now, a thermostat is different than a thermometer. A thermostat reads the room, notices the temperature, but sets what it wants to maintain. A thermostat measures, observes, and responds intentionally. It decides what the environment will be and then adjusts to keep it that way. Think about that thermostat on your wall that you set so that the temperature will just be maintained. That thermostat sets the temperature that it wants, and it doesn't get controlled by every fluctuation around it. It responds intentionally to reach the goal that you set for it. Emotionally, this means pausing, processing, and choosing how to act rather than reacting automatically. That's how emotional regulation works. You can either go through your day reacting to everyone else's energy, or you could be a thermostat, the person who decides, this is the energy I'm bringing into the room today. One reflects, the other leads. Pause for a second and ask yourself, in my day-to-day life, am I more of a thermometer or a thermostat? So many of our emotional reactions are inherited. We learn from watching our parents, our siblings, or even early teachers. Let's look at a few examples because these patterns don't just appear out of nowhere. Quick anger or rage often comes from growing up around someone who lost their temper when things went wrong. Maybe your parent yelled when they were stressed or frustrated. So you learned that anger equals control. Now as an adult, when you feel uncertain or things don't go as planned, your brain follows that same pathway. It fires up the fix it or explode reaction before you even realize it. Silence or avoidance, on the other hand, can come from the opposite environment. Maybe you grew up in a home where conflict wasn't safe or speaking up only made things worse. So, instead of reacting outwardly, you learned to retreat inward, to stay quiet, to keep the peace, to disappear until the storm passes. As an adult, that silence can feel like self-protection, but it often leaves you unheard and disconnected. Anxiety or people-pleasing often traces back to environments where love or approval felt conditional. Maybe you learned that being good, agreeable, or helpful was how you earned acceptance. So now when someone seems upset or distant, your instinct is to fix it, to over-explain, apologize, and take responsibility for emotions that aren't even yours. These responses aren't weaknesses. They're old survival strategies. They were formed in moments when your nervous system learned, this is how I stay safe. What once protected you might now be the very thing that is holding you back from connection, calm, and growth. I see this all the time, and the impact isn't just on us. It affects everyone around us. People feel like they have to walk on eggshells. Tension builds. That's why understanding your triggers and learning to regulate them is so important. When our emotions take over, there's a lot happening in our brains. When you get triggered, your amygdala, which is the emotional processing center, fires first. It's fast, it's automatic, and designed to protect you. It responds before you even have a chance to think, which is why you might feel instant anger, fear, frustration. But your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that's responsible for reasoning, planning, responding thoughtfully, that kicks in a few seconds later. Some people get stuck in the amygdala or triggered response. They bypass their prefrontal cortex almost entirely because they react purely from emotion, habit, or learned patterns. This can look like someone yelling, snapping, or just lashing out before there's even a moment to pause and think. Over time, if you go frequently right straight to your amygdala, those reactions create tense, unpredictable, or uncomfortable environments for everyone around them. The good news is that you can train your prefrontal cortex to step in and have a controlled response. People who learn to do this, they still feel that surge of emotion. They might want to yell, scream, or lash out, but they have built the skill to pause, regulate, and respond in a way that serves them and the situation. They still feel the anger or frustration, but instead of letting it control their actions, they acknowledge it, process it, but then act thoughtfully. This ability to respond rather than react is emotional maturity in action, and it's what allows relationships, teams, and families to thrive instead of crumble under stress. Let's look at a few scenarios to see how this plays out in real life. Scenario 1, remember the traffic frustration that we talked about earlier? I'm sure many of you have been, probably all of us have been in a situation where either we are triggered by a traffic situation or someone else that we are with. So the trigger response is someone cuts you off in traffic, you yell, even though they can't hear you, and you wouldn't act like that if they were next to you. You carry that irritation for the next several minutes because your brain is stuck in fight or flight. A controlled response to this same situation when someone cuts you off would be that you would still feel the surge of anger, but you would take a breath, remind yourself that it's not personal, and you would merge safely. You practice patience and remind yourself that you're in a hurry sometimes too, and maybe that's what's going on for them. You acknowledge your frustration without letting it control your actions. You might think in your head, what an idiot, but you maintain calmness. Scenario 2, when you're trying to assemble something that's complicated. We've all purchased something that arrives in a box with instructions that make absolutely no sense. The diagrams look like an abstract piece of art. Their parts seem to belong to a different project, and screws that all look identical, and there are just too many of them. You start off trying to follow the directions carefully, but frustration starts to build. Nothing is fitting the way it's supposed to, and before you know it, your chest tightens, your hands clench, and you snap at the people who are standing right next to you trying to help, turning a simple project into a stressful battle. A triggered response would be that you're trying to follow the instructions that don't make sense, your frustration boils over, you snap at family members, and you blame them. A controlled response would be that you're still carrying those same feelings of irritation and that momentary urge to yell or to lose your temper, to throw something, but instead you pause. You take a deep breath. Maybe you even step back from the project for a minute, but then you calmly step back in to help. Maybe you even laugh at the confusing instructions, and you finish the task with less stress. Scenario 3, maybe a misunderstood comment. A triggered response, if a family member says something that feels critical to you, your heart races because it taps into something deeper. So you immediately yell back, you defend yourself, or you shut down emotionally. The conversation escalates and no one feels heard. Let's look at that same situation through a controlled response. Yeah, you're still going to have your feelings hurt, or you might even be mad or annoyed. but you pause to ask clarifying questions. You might think, they probably didn't mean it that way. Maybe I'm taking it out of context. Or maybe I could explain my perspective calmly. And so you respond with awareness rather than reacting from impulse. Because these happen so often, these misunderstood comments, let's look at just a few specific examples here. One example could be that a partner tells you that you always take so long to get ready. A triggered response would just snap and say, "No, I don't." And then you would start thinking, or maybe you would even say it, "If I didn't have to do everything around here and you helped out a little, maybe I could get ready faster." You feel resentful and tense. Let's look at a controlled response to that same situation. You could pause, take a breath, and say, "I hear you. Are you in a hurry?" Or, "Could you help me by unloading the dishwasher or feeding the dog or getting the kids ready for bed so that I could get ready faster?" Another example, you text a friend and then you see the little bubbles appearing in the text, and then they disappear. Hours go by with no reply. A trigger response to this would be that you assume they're ignoring you or they're mad at you, and so your mind spirals into overthinking. A controlled response to that same scenario would be to remind yourself that there are a dozen possible reasons for the delay. You breathe, you shift your focus back to your day, and you just wait to respond until you have more context. Scenario 4, just some everyday household moments. Let's say a door is left open, or a dish is left in the sink, or a small mistake happens. A triggered response to those would be to instantly snap and demand it be fixed, and it's your way. The room tenses, everyone tiptoes around you. A controlled response would be that you notice the irritation, but instead of lashing out and yelling, you either gently remind the person or you just let it go. Your calm approach encourages cooperation and reduces stress for everyone. What I want us to see is that everyone feels the emotional surge, the triggered response. It's natural. The difference is in training yourself to engage that controlled response before reacting. That pause, sometimes just a breath or a short mental note, allows you to choose how to respond and not just react. Over time, this builds emotional resilience, healthier relationships, and less stress in daily life. And people don't have to feel like they have to walk on eggshells around you. Fight, flight, freeze. These reactions kept humans alive. Today, they can cause overreaction, conflict, unnecessary stress. But when we practice thermostat energy, our prefrontal cortex engages, giving us the ability to respond intentionally rather than react impulsively. Think about relationships, work, family, social media. People who rage or react quickly create uncomfortable spaces. You feel the tension. People tiptoe around them. Kids, spouses, coworkers, even friends. You can see the ripple effect. I've noticed in my own family, some people respond with silence when frustrated, some respond with anger, but both are learned patterns. The silent approach protects energy but doesn't resolve anything. The anger approach often shuts down collaboration. Neither is ideal, but noticing patterns is step one toward change. Here's what I want you to try next time you feel yourself going red and into an automatic triggered response. First, pause before reacting. Even 3 to 5 second pause gives your brain a chance to catch up. Then label that emotion in your head, not screaming, but in your head. Just say, like, I feel frustrated or I feel fear. Naming it reduces its intensity. And then observe without judgment. Your trigger comes from a pattern, not necessarily the present moment. I want to dig a little bit deeper here. People can be so quick to judge. Sometimes our quick judgments also come from learned patterns. For example, the traffic frustration. The pattern is maybe you grew up in a household where impatience or road rage was common. And so seeing someone cut in front of you just automatically triggers anger. Your quick judgment might be, that driver is reckless and disrespectful. But the reality could be that the driver probably didn't see you or isn't thinking about you at all. Your reaction comes from a learned habit, not the actual moment. Let's go back to following instructions and in assembling something. The pattern is that maybe growing up, someone in your family got easily frustrated when things didn't go perfectly. Mistakes were criticized, questions were dismissed, or there was a pressure to get things right immediately. So you internalize the idea that confusion, trial and error, asking for help meant that you were inadequate or failing. This learned pattern shapes just how you respond today when you encounter tasks that feel complicated, confusing, or unfamiliar. Your judgment thought might be, I'm so dumb, I can't figure this out. Why can't I just get it right the first time? So your trigger response is to open the box and look at the instructions and then instantly just feel overwhelmed. Pieces are missing, you think, or maybe the diagram is just so unclear and the steps don't make sense. And so you mutter to yourself, this is so dumb and it's so hard and I can't figure this out. I feel like a failure. Frustration naturally builds quickly. You start snapping at anyone nearby, even if they're there to help, because your brain is replaying that old pattern of judgment and fear of inadequacy. The actual reality and controlled response is to tell yourself, this is a new and tricky task. Struggling doesn't mean I'm incapable. Everyone needs time to figure things out, and it's okay to ask for help or go step by step or to go slow. So you pause, you take a deep breath, and you remind yourself that struggling with something unfamiliar is normal. And that's how we learn and that's how we grow. So you think this isn't about failing, it's about figuring it out. I can ask for help or just take it one step at a time. So you slow down. You break the task into smaller pieces or you ask for someone's help calmly. Instead of letting the trigger take over, you use awareness to respond thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. I feel like that is such a key concept, to use your awareness to respond thoughtfully rather than just reacting impulsively. When you notice these triggers, it's a signal to just step back and observe. Your past is influencing your present reaction. It's time to grow out of those, to take on more mature emotions. So by acknowledging the pattern and practicing a calm, deliberate response, you build emotional resilience, which is going to reduce unnecessary conflict inside of yourself and with everyone around you. And you keep your energy focused on finding a solution rather than building frustration. Let's go back to those critical or misunderstood comments. The pattern was that maybe growing up you had a parent or a teacher or a coach who was quick to correct, or maybe they just expected perfection. So you learned that mistakes weren't safe. Your quick reaction to this is they're just picking on me, or they're attacking me, or I can't ever get it right. But in reality, most of the time, the comment isn't meant to be personal. It's just some feedback or even a passing thought that they had. But because your brain has been trained to associate correction with pain or shame, you react as if you're under attack. In past relationships, maybe you felt unseen, criticized, or unappreciated. So even just some light-hearted comments can feel heavy to you. So today, if someone makes a comment, maybe your quick reaction is, they don't appreciate me. They criticize everything I do. But in reality, what they said may have been more neutral, maybe even playful, but your nervous system only knows one way to respond: to get defensive. So instead of hearing the words, your brain just hears, I'm not enough. Let's now look at those petty control situations, maybe like the door being left open for a minute, or a mess being left, or a timing issue where someone's always late. Maybe growing up, someone in your household had strict rules. They got upset over small details. They worried about wasting resources like electricity, money, or time. So your brain learned that small disorders meant something was out of control and needed fixing immediately. The quick judgment that you're thinking about people who do those is that they're careless and they don't respect me or my space. Or now we're wasting money and energy because someone just didn't close a door. The reality is the door open, the dish being left in the sink, or the timing hiccup probably isn't personal. It's your brain reacting to old patterns of perceived chaos, not the actual impact of the situation. Recognizing this allows you to pause before reacting. And if you look at that same situation with a controlled response, you're still going to notice that you are irritated by what they've done. But take a deep breath and then either gently remind the person or let it go. When you respond intentionally, you maintain your calm, you reduce tension, and you model that thermostat energy rather than just mirroring the chaos like a thermometer. We all have these learned responses. Your trigger is showing you where you've stored emotion, not necessarily what's happening right now. We have to learn from history. And that's why the first step is to observe without judgment. Notice the feeling before you label it as bad. Once you do that, you can start using your thermostat energy instead of a thermometer energy. You choose your response instead of absorbing everyone else's temperature and then just reacting. So set your response intention. Decide consciously, I choose calm, I choose clarity. I'm not saying this is going to be easy. It's going to take practice. But then ground yourself physically. Take a deep breath, move your body, notice your surroundings. And if you're the one who tends to react, maybe with anger, sarcasm, or silence, picture a project going wrong at home. Instead of yelling or shutting down, you take a minute, you feel the irritation rise, and then you choose to respond from clarity, not chaos. That pause, that's emotional leadership. When you start showing up this way, you're going to notice in your parenting that your kids are going to feel safe to make mistakes and learn problem solving. In your relationships, you're going to build deeper trust and connection instead of tension. At work, you're going to be known as calm, steady, and solution-oriented. And in self-growth, you're going to protect your own energy, lower your own stress, and stay on track with your goals. And isn't that so much more important? All of that. How your kids feel, how your family feels around you, how people at work see you, how you feel yourself. Isn't all of that worth more than the few cents it might cost on your electricity bill to have a door left open for a minute? Or the extra time it might take you to put a dish from the sink and into the dishwasher? Your triggers aren't flaws. They're messages inviting you to step into leadership over your emotions and model what growth looks like. Your mindset shift here is that your triggers are your teachers. They're not enemies. They're going to show you where growth is possible. So when you feel those emotions of trigger setting in, that's when you need to pause and say, wait, this is my time to learn. This is my teacher. Your future self is counting on you to do this. You don't want to keep living your life like this where you're always the one getting mad about little things and reacting and making everyone else tiptoe around you. So every time you pause, reflect, and choose to be a thermostat and show up with thermostat energy, your future self says thank you. And so will everyone else around you. So this week, I want you to try these things. Identify your top 3 emotional triggers. What situations, people, or events consistently push your buttons to create that automatic emotional reaction? Is it the way someone drives? Is it the way a spouse does something? Think of them as patterns in your life that tend to get you frustrated or upset and anxious. Pause the next time those happen, label it, and then observe before responding. Maybe take some time to journal what worked, what didn't, how did it feel, or just mentally go through that. And then practice one thermostat exercise every day this week. Here's how you're going to do it. You're going to notice a small irritation, something that bugs you. You're going to take a deep breath. You're going to set intention, and you're going to respond calmly. You're not going to let the little things bother you. Start small, and then growth will compound. Remember, your triggers, the things that are grinding your gears, those are your teachers. They are going to guide you toward awareness, toward self-mastery, and emotional freedom. You are capable of creating calm in chaos. You can respond intentionally. You don't have to just have that knee-jerk, angry reaction. Your future self is already proud of you for trying this, for being here today and just considering this. So take a small step. Pause, notice, choose thermostat energy. You've got this, and I'll be cheering you on. If this episode resonated with you, I invite you to stay connected and keep exploring your growth with me. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening. Have a great day and focus. Focus all week on controlling those emotions so that you can master your emotional triggers.